With Hu Tao making a rerun, I wanted to talk about her place in the meta and where the Pyro element as a whole stands. Hu Tao was the second limited 5-star DPS character released in Genshin Impact, and it was quickly found out that she was a top of the line unit, cementing herself as one of the big three of Genshin at the time. While the competition was scarce, she clearly separated herself from the likes of Klee and Diluc in terms of Pyro DPSs, and was really competing with Ganyu. This is because of her built-in mechanics that support a high charge attack scaling, as well as her skills Pyro and Fusion damage being incredible. Additionally, Pyro has two very strong reactions, that being Vaporize and Melt. Both reactions cause the user's damage to be multiplied by a certain amount, and long-standing players can utilize them even further by reverse vaping or reverse melting. But this is really Genshin Impact: apply Pyro, apply Hydro, and you'll kill the enemy regardless. Hu Tao is a perfect example of this. She really highlighted the damage that Vaporize can do, and for a while put Pyro at the very top of the DPS charts. This would persist for a while, but for Hu Tao specifically, very few units could actually match up to her damage. Hu Tao also had the added advantage, I use this word very lightly, as her weapon, the Staff of Homa, is immensely powerful for her, but at the time of her first banner, there was no pity for the weapon banner system, thus making it completely RNG if you got this weapon or not. So she had a cracked weapon and was cracked at C0, all while wanting to build HP, crit, and a bit of EM. Now looking at Hu Tao's constellations, my personal opinion as a day one Hu Tao main, to me, C1 is an immense quality of life improvement that I personally prefer over Staff of Homa. While Staff of Homa is a stronger pick if you want higher damage, I just really enjoy the smoothness that C1 provides. The rest of her cons are really just if you're dedicated to Hu Tao specifically. C2 gives you more damage with her passive mark, C3 increases her normal attack damage, this includes her charge attack, C4 provides crit rate to teammates, and C6 is where you see people doing those nuking showcases with her ultimate. Now, I want to talk about Hu Tao's place in the meta, and has she fallen off? Since her release, Hu Tao has been a top tier DPS that I have personally used in every single Abyss up until version 4.6. And I can say that while I have been able to clear the Abyss pretty easily with a proper team, it has been getting more and more difficult. But what I mean by this is that it takes a minute longer to clear her side of the Abyss. And frankly, as long as I get 4 stars, that's all that matters. Instead of it taking like 30 seconds, it now takes me about, 50 to a minute and a half, just depending on what's there. So to new players or veterans who are interested in her, I still think she's a great pickup. She's definitely not top 3 anymore, and if you compare it to Neuvillette, Arlecchino, or Alhaitham, yeah, she won't have the damage output with their speed, but she's still a strong unit that when you give her a proper team, such as Xingqiu, Yelan, Zhongli, which has been my go-to units, there just won't be an issue. But she has many options. You can run her with the double Geo core, her Farina teams despite having a healer. The damage output that Hu Tao and Farina can do is absolutely disgusting. Typically, my Hu Tao hits around 80k. With Farina, she was hitting like 110, 111 while being at full HP. She has a lot of teams, but the easiest for me are the Vaporized teams. But this is just how things work in gacha. Power creep happens, and sometimes the 1.x units can't be king anymore, except for these two. Speaking of these two though, the rest of Pyro has been pretty consistent over the years. We've gotten a few defense units like Toma and Dea who have aged pretty well. Traverse offers a nice buff to Overload. Gaming, despite being a 4-star DPS unit, at C6 he's very strong. I'm not kidding, give him a Cloud Retainer, a Farina, and a Bedit, and he's a force. Now granted, Farina is a huge damage boost for anyone, but for a 4-star, he's good. Now Liddy is a pretty underrated unit in my opinion that doesn't get talked about a lot. While he's not the pinnacle of damage, if you can manage to get his rotations right, then you won't have an issue with clearing content. He's a charged attack character with high scaling. However, he wants a mono pyro team, which isn't everyone's cup of tea. His playstyle isn't the funnest, his ult and skill are flashy and very suiting of a magician, but he's definitely a more selective unit. You really have to have a taste for him. Unlike Neuvillette, who's just Unga Bunga, or even Arlecchino, who just spams normal attack until your mouse breaks, his damage output is really great. I will say that from his ascension levels alone, he gets a ton of crit, which is extremely helpful in building this man. Now the latest and greatest Pyro addition, Arlecchino. She is in the argument for strongest DPS in the game right now for a reason. She's incredibly easy to use, easy to set up, and does a huge amount of damage, all while supporting a 3-star weapon. Not kidding. While most players may not be familiar with her Bond of Life mechanic, with Arlecchino she's incredibly easy to understand. While her rotation doesn't have a strict timeline like Cloran, putting someone like Zhongli, Layla, or even Toma is a huge benefit. Or even Dea, with Arlecchino having a domain set specifically tailored to her Bond of Life mechanic, she's an absolute force to be reckoned with. Now, Arlecchino has very strong early constellations. C1 will give you interruption resistance, and it will increase the damage of her enhanced normal attacks, which is where all of her damage comes from, which has been a staple C1 for many of the recent DPSs of having interruption resistance. But the second half of the constellation is very good. C2 lets her immediately ready her mark. So before C2 you would skill on the enemies and then switch to your supports. By the time you set up your buffs, Arlecchino's mark is ready and you can go ahead and do your damage. At C2 and up, you do your supports first and then switch to Arlecchino so she can instantly grab her mark and do her damage. Additionally, at C2 whenever you grab her mark, she'll send out this AoE blast of damage that's a really nice nuke. Overall, Pyro gained a phenomenal DPS while still getting another great unit, that being Lenny and Fontaine. But I also want to talk about another Pyro DPS that gets shunned away in a corner, that being Yoimiya. While she was released during 2.0, she's a character that didn't really stand out to many. You see, Yoimiya is a 5-star build DPS that excels in single target scenarios while having virtually no AoE, despite being centered around fireworks with huge blasts. Fireworks with big... Okay, whatever, miHoYo. While many write her off, I would really like to say that you can set Yoimiya up for success fairly easily. First off, she's a standard crit DPS unit who wants attack. Which support comes to mind? Bennett. She also has her own dedicated support with Yunli, who is great at buffing normal attacks. And with her being Pyro, Vaporize is going to be the way to go as it does more sustained damage overall, which fits Yoimiya's rotations of her spamming her normals. Additionally, she has other great supports like Yelan and Zincho, with their coordinated attacks being just the boost that she needs so that she can properly proc Vaporize. And I do want to say here that in order to enhance her Vaporize damage, and this holds true for the likes of Hu Tao, Gaming, and Arlie, and really just any Pyro DPS that wants to vape, having a bit of EM will drastically increase your damage. I typically try to aim for at least 1 to 200 EM and then focus the rest on crit, or if my crit ratio is really good, then maybe I'll take the hit on EM, but I still like to have some. Now, while enemies in the Abyss are growing stronger and having more HP, if you compare Yoimiya's damage to the other new DPSs that are coming out, yeah, her damage is falling off. However, if you like her, you can make her work. You just have to set her up properly. With that being said, is your Yoimiya not doing enough damage? I have a solution. Slap a Freyna on her team. Problem solved. In single target instances. Pairing up Freyna and Bennett with a Yelan is such an offensive rampage that will devour any boss. While this doesn't fix her inherent drawback of having no AoE, when doing boss rushes or when there's a single boss in the Abyss, she can be a great pick. This means that picking up any Pyro DPS in our current state, especially a 5-star, is a very solid option. Arlecchino, Hu Tao, Lenny, Yoimiya, even a C6 Gaming is viable. Now, as we get into the Pyro supports, there's actually not many of them. Actually, we don't even have a 5-star Pyro limited support. While Dea has been increasing in value, she's on the standard banner. So for Pyro supports, I guess we can save that topic for a different video and discuss the unthroned kings that lay there. But let me know what y'all think. Are you picking up a Hu Tao? Are you saving? I hope you win the 50-50s and I'll see you in the next one.